And we're back with the second half of this tutorial. And this one is for the print formatting. And I changed things up a bit. I'm actually going to be using my second book file from this series to do the print formatting, since I have the first one already formatted, but I'll be using some things from that first file as well. But something that I did not quite cover in the ebook one, which wouldn't be as important for ebook as it would be for print, is those section breaks. I know a lot of people probably use regular page breaks, and it's kind of a pain to go back in and change those page breaks to section page breaks. But since this is an old file, I too had page breaks rather than section breaks. And I'm going to show you a little bit faster of a trick to go through, especially when you're getting this file prepped for print formatting. But if you see words separated out like this, especially after we apply the full justification to your paragraph styles, it just means that you did not hit the return before, and then, okay, you'll see your page break. Now you can delete this out here and then go in here and go layout, breaks, and do next section, and then you'd have to delete out that return at the top. I think Drafted Digital would zap it, but since we're doing this and keeping everything clean for the paperback formatting, I would recommend zapping that out. So that's one way you can do that. Or, let's go back. You can see how this is here. And when you highlight this and change it here, next page, you'll still have to delete this out. But that's another way of doing that. But what I would do then is enter down, make sure this is all in one line, highlight it, hit Control-C, or you can even right-click and hit copy here. Now you've copied this, and you'll of course have to have your marks on in order to see that actual break and highlight it. But once you've copied that, pull it right back up here so it's nice and tight for your formatting at the end of the content, but make sure you have that return, because if you delete that return, it's going to do that weird full justification to your last line again. Okay, so now that you have copied that and you scroll down to the end of the next chapter where you'll find that I did the same thing and didn't even have the return there, make sure that's down on its own line, highlight it, go Control-V, and it doesn't jog that down on the next one there. You just have to make sure you pull that up end of the content. And that's a little faster way than having to go through the layouts, breaks, and doing that for every single chapter. So we'll work smarter, not harder. Go Control-V, scroll back up here, tighten it up. Same thing here. So return, highlight, Control-V. We'll go one more time here, Control-V, and pull it back. All right, now I've got this file here laid out to perfectly match. I think I've got an extra return here I don't need, to perfectly match the first file that I formatted for this series. The only difference in the layout is that I did remove that praise page. So I only have 5 pages of front matter instead of the 6 that I had for the first book. But I would recommend when you're doing a series, like I'm doing here, of working off of a template, of copying that front matter and using it to format your future books in the same series. So everything is consistent and it just looks more professional that way. So once you have your Drafted Digital file done and you've got your Mobi and EPUB or distribution through Drafted Digital, we're going to go back and save a copy of this. So we'll go Save As, and see, I've got this saved in here. I'm going to put Print New and hit Save. And actually, I'm going to, since this is a really old file here, I'm going to change this to the most recent file type and hit Save. And yeah, we're going to replace the existing file. Okay. So now that we have saved this, I'm going to actually come back here and make sure that my Drafted Digital file has this new format too. So we hit Save. Okay. One more time. That's the one we want there. We'll go Save I'm going to ask if we want to replace it. Go yes. Okay, so now we have this file that we're going to be working with for the print. And I have my completed graveyard shift for book 1 file already done. And I'll be using that kind of as a guidepost for when we're going through. And you will see, like, I have this praise page in the front of this book. That's the only thing that we will be skipping over. Everything else in here we'll be kind of using as a template for formatting the next book in the series. And I'm going to go ahead and X out of the Graveyard Shift Draft to Digital file. So we're just working with these two. Okay, since we've saved this, and this is not the Draft to Digital one that we're saving on top of, we'll make our changes from here. One of the first things you're going to want to do is hit Control A and go to the Layout tab. And we're going to go Page Setup. Go to the paper first. You're going to have to decide what your trim size is going to be for your book. Depending on if you're using KDP or IngramSpark to upload your book, you'll want to check their websites and see the available trim sizes they have. For this particular book, I am doing a 5x8. The only time this would need to be different for this trim size is if you're going to have a graphic that stretches all the way to the edge of the page. You don't see that too often, but when you do, what they're having to add is called a bleed space, which is an 1/8 of an inch, 0.125, on the top, bottom, and outer edge of the page. So you would have to add that twice for the height of the page there. So that would be 8.25. And for the width, just once, because the side that tucks into the spine, you don't have to worry about it. So that would be 5.125. But since I don't have any graphics like that for this book, I'm just going to leave mine at 5x8. So it's kind of a little more simplified to do it that way too, especially if you're just starting out and not wanting to complicate your formatting. Next, we're going to go to margins. And down here on the drop deal, you want to put mirror margins, because this is a book, so you're going to be printing on fronts and backs of pages, and you'll see spreads. You can leave this selected sections if you want. I go ahead and hit whole document just to be safe. We do have the whole thing selected, but better safe than sorry. Also, you're going to want to adjust things up here, and this is going to depend on if you want your headers or footers with the page number, the book title, your author name. I don't put anything at the top, so I put just 0.75 there. I do everything on the bottom footer, so I put 0.8 here, but you might want to do things differently if you want a different arrangement. But this is where you set all that up. On the outside, I just do a 1/2 inch, and on the inside, I do 0.75. It's a little larger because that's the side that's going to be tucked in and glued to the spine, so you're going to need a little bit more allowance on this end. And I add a 0.14 for the gutter. KDP, maybe IngramSpark, but I'll leave a link in the description for KDP where they have their suggested margins for the different page counts and things like that. So for layout, I just put 0.2 on both of these. The header won't matter so much for this particular book file that I'm doing because we don't have anything in the header. But for the footer, I do 0.2 because you want to make sure that that's sitting above the trim size, which even if you don't have that bleed for a full graphic that goes edge to edge, they do want you to account for at least an 1/8 inch of trim, like that offset printing. When they trim, it can be off up to an 1/8 of an inch. So you want to make sure everything important is within that margin. So 0.2 is well within that, so all good. We're going to leave these unchecked for now, just so we can kind of see what they do here in a bit. But once you have all of this set up, hit OK, and everything's going to get shuffled. So one of the reasons why I don't use Draft to Digital's paperback formatting, because you'll notice probably when you're uploading your ebook file, if you use them to get your Mobi and EPUB files or do any distribution, when you ask them for a paperback PDF, they tend to make any of your hyperlinked text a footnote. So if you don't want that, you're probably going to still want to just do this manually in Word, and then we'll just export a PDF with the fonts embedded. But even as a paperback, those hyperlinks aren't going to do you any good. So you're going to want to go through and remove the hyperlink for everything. And also, since this isn't in Draft to Digital, we can remove these periods here. That's something you'll have to go through and do individually for everything. Just make sure those are stripped out. And I drop that down to 10. You can go a little bit smaller size font for your paperback. And this font, since we're going to embed it, you can also change it up if you want. I would recommend going with something that's still very easy to read, nothing too crazy that's going to make the reading a little tough. People aren't reading your book for the fancy fonts, they're reading it for the story. And sometimes a fancy font can distract from that. So I also wouldn't go with anything like Times New Roman or Arial. Those are kind of the, those are good for essays and such in school, but I'd go with something that's a little bit more stylized for print. Garamond, that's the one that I use for just about everything. I think Books Antiqua is another good one. But you can do some research and see what's industry standard right now, and it changes from time to time, but that's just the one I like to use. So I'm going to scroll down, and you'll notice some of your pages, the content, especially if it's stretched to the full page in your ebook formatting when we were using the 8.5 by 11, just the default page size. It may be spilled onto a second page, so you'll want to shrink things up a bit. We can even adjust this if that's a little large for your taste. You can drop it down a bit. I'm going to go through here, delete this out. Since this is a print book, I usually don't try to market a whole lot of things toward ebooks because a lot of people who read print prefer print, and they don't want to see that you're giving special privileges to those who read ebooks. Sometimes that's not the case, but I usually just zap that free book link out, especially since you can't have links in your paperback. Well, I say that you could include a graphic for a QR code if you wanted. That's just another option there, but I just keep mine nice and clean. You'll also notice sometimes when you shuffle around the page size that clean indent that we had stripped off before, that suddenly has the style applied to it and might be indented. So if we hit OK, it looks like that one was OK, just a little space here, so not a big deal on that one. You can kind of scroll around and see how things are out here. You don't need the period here. And on this font style, I'm going to glance over and see what I did for this one here. So if we go, we'll just go modify just so we can see everything. Looks like it's 11. We'll go paragraph, exactly 16, and I have 1/4 of an inch. Let's check out this here. I do have that widow and orphan control. If you're not familiar with what this is, if you have a paragraph and the last line of that paragraph won't fit with the margins on a page, they'll throw it off on the other page and it can look a little weird and lonely by itself, just that one line. If you check this box, that will take at least 2 of the last lines from that paragraph and put them on the next page so it doesn't look so weird and disjointed from the story. So that's a good thing to have checked. If it looks too weird for you or leaves too much blank space, or you're really trying to conserve and get your page count down so you can adjust the pricing a little easier on your book, make it more affordable for you and for readers, you can leave this unchecked. I like to check it just because it does help make things look a little cleaner in the print version. So now that we know what we did on the first book and we want things to be consistent, I'll hop over here and adjust it right from the normal template. And we'll have to double check the front and back matter again, just like before, to make sure it only did this to the body text. But I'm going to go paragraph and go exactly. Okay, make sure that's 25, justified. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm also going to change this here to 11 and hit OK. I'll double check this. So it changed everything there. Kind of scroll up. And it looks like it changed things for this too, for some reason. So we don't want that to do, but since that's a different style, what we can do here, let's go single and hit OK. I'll scroll down and make sure that didn't change it there. I'll come back up here. It did that on the copyright page too. So unless you had a specific style that you created, which if you were trying to keep it simple, maybe you didn't, but you'll have to go back and adjust some things possibly there. So we'll go single space. Okay, I'll fix that. Just kind of glance over things. Now, since this is the print version, we're going to have to keep in mind front and back pages. So if you have like this full title page here, and then you've got a copyright, which I may arrange things. I think I had the half title page that I rearranged and did linear. I had a praise page actually, but since we did this half title page here and kind of shifted everything through, I'll be rearranging some pages in the front here. And one of the easier things to do if you have something set up in a previous book is to just copy it and then alter the text so everything is consistent. So I'm going to shrink this down so you can kind of see. But then we'll hop over here and you'll notice I've got this blank page because that's the back of this page. And then I've got the half title page in the front. And then this is the full title page further down now because where you sign, a lot of times it's a page or two in. If you just pull any book off your shelf, you can kind of flip through and see the different layouts, but you'll get a feel for what is industry standard. So I'm going to highlight everything up to this first return. Actually, I'm going to highlight everything up to the first chapter so you can get a good look at how I'm going to do this. And go Control-C and hop over here to this new book. And I'm going to go right before all this content and paste it. And then as I edit it for this particular book, I'll delete it out the old content that's after it. And you'll notice that that style went and applied again. So even though you pasted it, the styles can shift up. So you'll want to be conscious of that. We'll hit OK. Make sure that still looks okay there. Okay, this book is book 2 in the series, so we're going to go Pocket Full. Let's see if this is going to fit. We might have to do a few different things. Okay, and it did go off a bit there. So I might have to do a little adjusting. What I may do here. So you do that, but that's going to throw it off a bit, and you don't want to start hitting your space bar and goof things up. So I'm going to keep this centered, but what I'm going to do, indents, and I'll just increase the right indent a hair. I'm going to start out small. Let's hit OK. Maybe a bit more. Got one more here. Let's hit OK. And then you'll turn your marks off just to see how that looks. See if you like it okay, or you might take the graphic and I'm hitting the right arrow key just to nudge it over a bit. That might be the better option here for this. We'll go paragraph again and drop that down a bit. You might see some weird lines going on there, but if you do, just kind of zap it around until you're happy with how things look. Might even see if that works okay. So I might even be able to keep that centered with that graphic. Okay, I'm going to turn the marks back on just so I can copy everything between the two returns, including those two returns. And then when I come down here to where I have this full title page, I will highlight those two returns above and below. And when I hit Control-V, we'll just swap that out. Okay, and then of course I'm going to have to change this to book 2. I'll hop up here, double check how everything's looking. Turn the marks off here if you're wanting to get a full picture of how the book's looking. So first page, and then this will be the first spread. So on the left side you'll see this books by. Okay, and then we have everything on this full title page. Kind of when you're looking at this, get an idea of where you're going to be signing. Get the area just to kind of try to visualize when you're signing these books so you have enough space to, if you have a longer tagline, I guess sometimes authors will have a standard thing that they put, or if you like to get a little bit more long-winded when you're autographing books, you can eliminate some space above your name or below just to make sure you have the space that you want. Okay, I'm going to jump back to 100%, and it looks like the spacing went a little crazy here too. Let's go back to home, paragraph, go single, hit OK. And I went ahead for this print version, since this won't be coming out or being updated until I do the relaunch for the 10-year anniversary. So I do have my cover designer credited on this page now too. The only thing I don't have right now, and you might want to highlight that so you don't end up uploading the wrong file, is the ISBN. Once I have that ready, I'll insert that here. Everything else in this file is ready to go though. So, and this is another spread page there. So it will be on the left side. You can always tell by the larger margin that that's in the spine. So this is a left side page. And then of course I need to swap out my dedication. So I'm going to highlight that from the section here that I changed up. Put here, I might jog that down a bit. Okay, and then that's going to be on the right side. So when you flip again, and that's actually where I'm going to have the story beginning. So I can now delete all of this stuff here that I used. Oh, I need to go back here and change up my copyright year. So don't forget to do that if you publish your second book in a different year than the first. And we'll need to change up the title on that copyright page. Alright, so everything's good there. Okay, so from here now I can delete everything up to that first chapter. And delete out this break. And it deleted out my, let's see if that's a heading 1 style. Okay, so if you delete out a section break here and it removes the style, just remember what style you are using. It puts that heading 1 style. And for some reason, I think it's because I have the wrong break style in here. You go breaks, next page. And we will delete this out. There we go. And now the heading as a style is applied to the proper text and not left over on the page before. Okay. I'm going to double check, see how all this is looking. Okay. I'm going to scroll down to the back here. Okay, we're not going to mess with too much of this just yet because this is going to be determined by the in section. Since we're going to export this as a PDF, it will look exactly the way we have it in here. So instead of trying to use like odd page breaks back here or even in the front matter, I like to see the blank pages that are going to be tucked within. So we'll get to that here in just a bit after we finish doing the formatting for the rest of the book body. Let's go view 100%. Okay, I think the first thing we're going to do is take a look at how I have those chapter headings for each first chapter set up. So view 100%. And you'll see I have an 11-point return, this little scythe graphic, and another 11-point return. And I think we covered like how to insert, when return this down, how to insert pictures from before. Video files. When you insert it that way, it should automatically put it in line with text. So if it's centered, it should be centered for you. Another way to do that, especially if you're using the same style you've used in a previous book, instead of having to readjust that, is to come over here and highlight from return to return. Having the marks on is going to make this a lot easier. And I'm going to go ahead and double check this. This says 12-point Gaudy Stout there, so we'll know. Hit Control-C, hop over to your other file. So if you're wanting things to look perfect here, you have to highlight that, go Control V. All right. You'll also notice the spacing's kind of off on some of this, so I'm going to double check and see if I did a different style here. CS Italic. See if that one's available here or needs to be created. Let's see, CS Italic. Apply that. Okay, so it's still putting all that spacing in there that we don't necessarily want on this. So I'm going to go single and hit OK. And I believe we do have a return. You just kind of reference your previous books if you're wanting things to be exact. That's 12, 12, 12, 12. So that's 11. This is 11 here. So if you have a certain size, you're going to want to keep that size consistent throughout. And I probably should have just left those at 11 before. So I've got the style here, 12 in italics. And I'm going to just double check my spacing just to make sure things are consistent. So yes, it is single. So I'm going to hop up here and keep things consistent. I'm going to make this 12. I may even delete this back just so I can make sure. I'm going to delete out that period, don't need it for this version. I'll delete that out and hit enter twice. And I may even center this. This isn't really necessary, but I'm OCD about it, so make sure that's perfectly lined up, centered all the way through. And I think what I'm going to do is create a new style based off of this here with the 12 points. So I can just click on it in the style gallery anytime I'm ready to adjust this. So what I'm going to do is come over here to A+. I'm going to go Lana quotes. We'll see if that works here. We'll pull it up in the style gallery here in a bit for the next one. But just to kind of go back and double check, make sure your spacing's all the same. And we'll get to this here in just a minute too. Since this is going to look just the way it does here. For industry standard, you're going to want to remove that first indent. And now there are a couple different things you can do. I like to just increase the size and make that first letter bold. But you can insert a drop cap if that's a style that you prefer. And they have some different options here too. You can make it a little smaller. You can change the font style if you want. Let's see how that, so you can do a lot of different things. I'm going to hit none. And I'm going to come back to home here. And I'm just going to increase that to 18 and make it bold. And that works for me here. So if I turn this off, I'm going to hop back over to this one here. All right, the only other thing I have to add is this 12 point, and I don't have it bold, so 12 point. And the spacing there looks a little interesting, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Font, Advanced. Okay, the scale is 85%. All right. If I hop back over here, and one more time, let's just hit 12. So take this, drop it down to 12, and scaling 85%. Just kind of, okay, and then I notice that I have the 1 spelled out. All right, so here's another one I'm going to create a style for. Chapter headings. Like that. Hit OK. We'll just have to remember to change. So, once you have everything consistent, how you have it set up for previous books, if you're trying to keep this consistent with the series, you can scroll on to the next chapter. Oh, and I went right past chapter 2. And since we changed up that heading style, you'll notice that it's already changed for these. The only thing you'll have to do is if you change up something different, you want to be consistent. So change it there. Now, it doesn't quite look to me like that. Okay, so it did go ahead and apply there. So you can always feel free to double check things. Okay, this did not automatically apply though because it was not a style previously applied in the ebook. So we'll just have to select that from the gallery. We call that Lana Quotes. And it did not italicize. So we're going to have to go modify and make sure this is checked for the style itself. Hit OK. And it didn't automatically update. But if you check this box here, hit OK. For some reason it's still not wanting to italicize. If we go update to match. Double check this on the next one. I'm going to delete here. I go ahead and delete it up just so we know that that's a 12-point space in here. And you can do some of these steps one by one or for each chapter as you go, whichever is easier for you. You kind of remember what you're working with. Control B. Just make sure you keep things consistent. So I'll delete this, go paragraph. And you can even create your own style for the first line if you want. I don't find that too difficult to mess with, so 18 in bold. Let's remove your marks just so you can see exactly how it's going to look. All right, let's go multiple pages. So once you go through and you have all these things applied to every chapter heading, adjusted the way you want, I won't bore you going through with this with every single one. Then it will be time to go in and add your headers and footers. And this is another reason why having these section breaks instead of just a regular page break is such a good idea. So since this is going to be for the bottom, for the footer, you just double click in that space and it will open it up. Now the first thing I'm going to do is unlink this from the previous section so you're not having anything retroactively applied to all your front matter. So click that off. I even click over in this next page, kind of see where things are going here, and we'll have to do it again after we make a few adjustments. But on this first page, we'll go page number, bottom of page, and even though we're going to delete this one off the first page, I just like to start here for simplicity's sake. Whatever you decide to choose for your headers and footers, make sure you remember the style because you're going to have to apply it again once we change a few things up here. So that was accent 2. And you'll notice it starts with 6. Where your story starts is usually what you want to do page 1 on. So we'll just hit start at page 1 and hit OK. And then you can always go back and double check how you had things set up. So I put the book name on the odd pages. So I'm going to put caps, pocket full of posies. And I believe I also dropped that down a size and I removed that expanded, and we'll double check that from the first book just for consistency's sake. I'll hit home. Yes, that's 11. Let's go font. And yes, it's 100 and normal. You can also copy and paste. I don't know if the styles would apply, but you'll notice how this is on every single page, not just the odd pages. And of course, the way to go about changing that is to check this different, odd, and even pages. So once you do that, everything's going to disappear on this other side here. So we'll have to click over here then and go back to this. But before you do this, you'll notice now suddenly it's linked to previous section. This is all one section, section 6 up here. So now it's linking to this previous one. So whatever you put in here, you'll suddenly see it pop up. So maybe not, maybe it's just linking. Well, and I guess since we have this set up in different sections here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no second page in any of these sections, so it's not affecting them. But it's still something you're going to want to do, because if you ever come up here and start adding pages in your front and back matter and see headers and footers pop up, you may end up overlooking them and having a botched file. So we definitely want to keep this in mind for the back matter of your book. But for here, I still unclick that link to previous. We'll delete this out. We go page number, bottom of page. You're going to be tempted to select something similar to your other style that's on the opposite side, but you don't want to do that. Whatever one you picked, and I believe it was accent 2, you're going to want to select. And the way to shift this to get it on the opposite side is to use your paragraph settings here. Now you're also going to see how it indents. Well, and I think this one did okay too. But if you see this indenting the same way as your body text, you can just come in here and remove it from your indentation here, and it will apply throughout. So the page numbers still link to that first one there. And then when you change this up, still have my caps on. Let me put a space here. I have that italicized, I believe. Okay, now I'm going to hop back over here and double check I have this set up. But I'm going to turn my marks on to be sure. And yes, the way I have this set up, I have 2 spaces in between these things. So we'll go ahead and zoom in just to get a good look at how I did that there. I'm just going to add another space, just like a little bit more separation. You can set it up however you like, but you kind of go through and notice. Okay, now let's go back to multiple pages. Now, since you don't want this information on the first page of each chapter, make sure you're on that footer, but you can go back to the design, check this different first page. Okay, I'm going to turn the marks off just to get a look at it. So everything's looking good, and you get down here and you think, well, crap, am I going to have to do this for every single chapter? And that's where we come back to this layout tab that we talked about in the ebook formatting for page setup. And we're going to look at this headers and footers. Go ahead and check this different first page right here. You want to wait and do this just so when you set this up to have the first page starting with number 1. But when you check this here and then hit the drop down for the whole document and hit OK, it will eliminate that. So you don't have to do that for whatever 20, 30 plus chapters in your book. Makes things a lot easier. Then you kind of scroll through and just see how everything's lining up. And I believe for the paperback that I did for this one, I'll turn these marks off and go multiple pages again here. We'll go and click off the headers and footers. Where I had my section breaks, my first one is maybe chapter 10. So we'll scroll on down there. For the draft to digital version, they automatically kind of redid the formatting for the first line after the break. And if you had 3 returns, they automatically inserted something. You don't have to have a graphic. You can just leave, the separation on the page if you want, or you can put a different graphic. That's up to you. But I went through and found where I had all those breaks, and I put in the same little chapter header break that I had before everything. So you can kind of copy and paste and go through and do that for each of your section breaks, but just make sure if you decide to add some type of formatting style, remove the indent and increase that letter, and kind of keep it similar to your chapter openings if you want. So back over here, and I still have all of this to kind of update to still pull out those periods, but I will do all that after showing you guys the back matter formatting here. All right, when we get to the end here, you'll notice that sometimes these headers and footers, and since this is in the same section, you want to uncheck that link to previous before deleting those. If you just go in here and start deleting these, it's going to delete them throughout your entire book because these sections are linked. So it's going to be a matter here of kind of just looking through and seeing how it's going to lay out. So this is on the right side of the spread, which is fine. I'm okay with this last page being to the left, and then this here, but I am going to have to remove the hyperlink. It's not going to do me any good there. I can remove these little dots here. And since I had a header style applied, it went ahead and applied that there. But on the next spread, I want this to be on the right side again. So what I'm going to do, turn on these marks here, see where this is. I'm going to include another break. And since this is all in the same section, you'll see another one of these pop up. If you uncheck this link to previous, highlight this and hit delete. And now anything that links beyond this point, you may have to do some more of that. So acknowledgements, and then once again, I want this to be on the right side. So I'm going to come right here, go layout, breaks, another break here. Just double check and make sure. Okay. Now I also, I'm coming up through here to delete out those periods. I can also delete out the periods on my About the Author. I'm also going to copy and paste this from the print version of the first book that I have set up. It doesn't have the links already, so it's nice and easy. Just highlight this, Control C, and then come over here, and I'm going to highlight everything here. Go Control V. And it did something a little squirrely here, because even though I copied and pasted, it did not paste over the spacing. So what I'm going to double check over here, so we got the Gaumond 11, so we have that at least in bold. I'm going to check the spacing here, so that's just single centered. So if we come over here, and I could probably take everything in this bit here. When I change this paragraph style and change it to single and hit OK, it will adjust that. I'm going to pay very close attention to how all of this looks, make sure it's all consistent. You do want this break here and this extra space at the end. When we export this file, it needs to be every single page, so up to that even number page. I think this is more important probably for IngramSpark, but I do it for KDP as well, just so your full PDF shows every single page front and back. So it always needs to end on that even page because it would be the back side of your last page. So once you go through this and you're happy with how everything looks for your print layout, you're going to want to go File, Save As, and then change this up here to a PDF. But before hitting Save, hit More Options. Make sure it says Publishing Online and Printing. And then when you click on the Options button here, make sure under this PDF options, the PDF-A compliant is checked. This way all of your fonts will be embedded. That should work well for IngramSpark and KDP. So I'm not going to export this because I still need to go back and do the other things, but I don't need to bore you guys with editing every single chapter heading since you have an idea of how that works now. Hope this was helpful. Trying to think if there's anything I missed. I think possibly the hyphenation options for this paperback one. Maybe we will take a look at that under the Layout tab. Hyphenation. Yeah. Hyphenation options. I'm going to go automatic. Uncheck that. I think I usually do ½ an inch and I do one consecutive. So hit OK. And now it shuffles things around a bit. So if you're making these changes after you formatted your back matter, you're going to have to come back in here and kind of see how this shuffled around again. One of the things you can do here, if you are doing this out of order and worried about it, is you can, right here at the end, insert an odd page break. The only difference this will do is it will not show you until you export the PDF the blank pages in between. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. This is why I do all my formatting for the body of the book, usually before I do any of the back matter formatting. But this is easy enough to fix here too. You can just check here and go break, do a page break there. And then of course, if you see any more of these headers or footers, make sure you unlink them before you delete them out. That's another reason why I don't do like the odd page breaks, because if you have a blank page that you're not seeing somewhere in there, it could be applying a header or footer to it that you're also not seeing. And I always worry about that. So that's why I just leave the regular blank pages. But once you insert that first one after your back matter, everything else should line up again beyond that. You just kind of check it over and export again. But you'll see, I'll turn these marks off. You'll see how the hyphenation works throughout your book. If at any point you think it's too much or too little, you can always adjust your hyphenation options again, just under that layout tab, hyphenation. Now this will apply to the whole book, but for instance, if you say didn't want any of your copyright page hyphenated, you could highlight that section, and I want to say that's under, yeah, paragraph settings, lines and page breaks, and then check this don't hyphenate and hit OK. And then whatever you have in that small section at least won't be hyphenated. But the layout hyphenation options, that will apply to the whole book, and you'll just have to go section by section for anything that you don't like the hyphenation on. I think that about covers it for the paperback. If you have any additional questions or anything that I didn't address that you are struggling with, feel free to leave the question in the comments. If you have any other tips that maybe you'd like to offer for anyone struggling with this that I didn't cover, feel free to leave those in the comments. So, I guess I'll catch you guys later.